Welcome to this bonus episode of The Breach Show. I'm the show's host, Donya Ziaee. This week, we're doing just a podcast. We had a COVID case in our production team, so doing a video show wasn't possible. But we'll be back next week with both our video and podcast. Today, we're airing a conversation we recorded a few weeks ago with our usual team, Pam Palmater, Elle Jones, and Martin Lukacs. Pam is a Mi'kmaq lawyer, professor, and author in Toronto. Elle is a poet, educator, and organizer. She's in Halifax. And Martin's a journalist and the managing editor of The Breach. He's in Montreal with me. In today's episode, we'll be talking about two subjects: defund the police and land back. Both of them demands that social movements have pushed into mainstream political discourse over the last few years. We're going to take stock of where these movements are at today and where they might be going next. Thanks for tuning in, and if you like what you hear, please don't forget to like, rate, and share this podcast. It really helps. Here's the conversation. We're going to start with Defund the Police. Over the last 2 years, we've seen the rise of the Defund the Police movement happening alongside the resurgence of Black Lives Matter. And it's created a huge shift in popular opinion. There's now, in Canada, a clear majority of people who support defunding the police and redirecting that spending towards other public services like mental health supports and so on. And Elle, I want to start with you because you've just gone through this process with the Halifax Police Board. You were leading a team there that produced this 200-page report, the first of its kind in Canada, that was laying out in full detail what defunding the police would actually look like in a city like Halifax. Your team wrote in the report that defunding isn't just about taking away resources, which is often how people think of it, but it's really about returning those resources. So I thought we could start there and you could tell us more about what you mean by that and what defund the police looks like.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to walk us back a little bit. Because the first thing I think that comes up when you say defunding is now we have this culture war over the term, right? So a lot of people are like, well, I just don't like defunding. It's really offensive. You should call it something else. Of course, this isn't a new concept. So the pretense that this is somehow radical and new is really ahistorical. Andrea Ritchie has pointed out that all social movements and political movements have been accompanied by defunding demands. In enslavement, there was a big boycott campaign, one of the largest boycott campaigns in history, which was the boycott of sugar. And the slogan for that was, in every grain of sugar, a drop of blood. And white women in particular, as the main purchasers of their households, were encouraged to not buy sugar from slavery. So that was a defunding campaign. We defunded South Africa during apartheid. The Panthers had a defunding platform in the 10-point plan. They said, take money away and give it to jobs. This really, really isn't new. So we have this new pretense that defunding is negative, that you can't do it, that this is some strange thing, when in fact it is always accompanied. I've been pointing out lately, what did the government do in Ottawa when they wanted to stop the convoy? They froze the money. They defunded the convoy. That's the first thing you do. So that's the first part, just to say that this is actually a really necessary component of any kind of political movement. What we fund, we value, and what we fund has power. So when people say they don't want to defund or they can't defund or they don't understand defunding, what they really mean is they're not interested in actually removing any power from the police. And so what we're talking about in the report, as you said, is not only saying this is actually really possible, so this pretense that this can't be done and it's just a fantasy doesn't really exist, because here's all the ways we can do it. And then, as we said, the second part is let's stop pretending this is somehow a negative attack, because what it's really doing is, if we want to call it reallocating, redistributing, retasking, it's taking that money and putting it where it can actually do some good, where it can prevent harm and violence, where it can go into communities, where people with the actual expertise or ability to deal with these issues can have that money. So one of the things I've really trying to be kind of pushing right now is saying, I don't have a problem with radical politics, but I don't actually think defunding is radical. I think it's quite common sense. It's quite basic. If the police aren't accountable, if they have huge budgets, if we don't really know what they do with them, if the civilian oversight agencies aren't capable of controlling them, then why are we giving them money? And why don't we do something else with that money? And I see Pam nodding along, so I'm going to stop talking because I don't want to give a 219-page speech to start us off. But that's my initial framing.